Welcome to Game Nights with JR. I'm JR, and I'm here to tell you about the games that we're going to be playing this November at our game night meetups. If you've been to our website at GameNightsJR.com, you've probably already seen that we have several events scheduled in November, and we're going to be playing this core set of featured games at each of them. Since November is the election, and by the time our first November event happens, we will have been through the election. I know we're all going to be really, really tired of all of the constant inundation and the anxiety and the nerves. So, what better way to celebrate than with some board games that will either help us commiserate well together or at least distract ourselves a little bit? So, I've curated a selection of 6 of my favorite games that, at least tangentially relate to how we live together as a community. And if you're wondering where the 7th game is, well, that is where my Patreons get to vote. So if you're one of the patrons at patreon.com/GameNightsJR, then you can go right now and vote for the 7th game that's going to be featured. And you'll see a separate video in there telling you exactly what those games are. But for now, let's get to the introduction of the 6 games that I've chosen to feature in our November Game Nights with JR, coming somewhere in the Metroplex to a bar near you soon. First up is Aquatica. When I pitch people this game, I basically like to say it's Aquaman the board game. This game plays up to 5, and each person is in control of their own underwater kingdom. This is a really unique engine building game. So, the first few turns, you're not going to be able to do very much, but as you continue to play and build combos and things like that, you eventually get to the place where you can make some really powerful moves. You are conquering territories, collecting minions, and generally trying to score more victory points than your opponents. This game features incredible, beautiful components, a really unique mechanism for scoring and engaging with the territories that you expand into, and generally it's just beautiful. This is one of my all-time favorite games, and I'm really looking forward to debuting it at Game Nights with JR in November. So if you like medium complex games that are just a lot of fun and is definitely not like anything else you've ever played, plan to play Aquatica. Next up is Apiary. This is a game about space bees. It is a worker placement game, which means you get a set number of, in this case, bees, and every round, each player takes turns placing their bees on to accomplish various tasks on the board. So maybe you want to explore space a little bit more with the Queen Bee spaceship. Maybe you want to expand your hive so that you can store more resources. Maybe you want to do a dance that will enable you to create a powerful combo. There are tons of ways that you can win in Apiary. And again, beautiful components, great board. Why not space bees as a theme, right? And yeah, it's political because, bees all serve a queen and all have to live together and work for the common good of the hive. So, maybe there's some good lessons we can learn by playing Apiary so soon after the election. Ancient Knowledge is a 4-player game. It's another engine builder, kind of like Aquatica, where you're trying to maximize the combos you can create. But this is a game about how knowledge is stored and passed down over generations, how a civilization can work to preserve its culture and its accumulated knowledge over the course of eons when only things like stone really remain. The theme is relatively light. You won't feel like you're playing in a history class, but again, there's some gorgeous art, some relatively simple mechanics. It doesn't take very long to learn, and the theme is just present enough to make it a really enjoyable experience. I've only gotten to play Ancient Knowledge a couple of times, but I've really enjoyed it both times, and it's such a fun, easy game that I look forward to maybe playing it with you in November. This is one of the newest games that I've gotten, though it's not a new game. It's been out for a few years. And if you're wondering why I'm holding the box funny, it's because if I do it like this, there's a glare. So I'm trying to make sure you can actually see this really beautiful artwork that is Hamlet. Hamlet is a city building game. So you all live in a little hamlet, and throughout the game, you are trying to build more parts of the community. It's set in like a vaguely medieval European context, so of course the center of the community is this cathedral that you're all working to build together, and the game actually ends when the cathedral is finished. This is another game that is really clever. It's pretty simple to pick up, and it's a worker placement game, so much like Apiary, where you have various people or mules, and you're trying to collect resources, transport them around the village, and then build various things like the blacksmith or the bakery or things like that. As you build things, you get more powers, and you see the community begin to take shape. It's a really fun little game, and again, it's about how we live together in a world where we all have competing interests and interests that we share in common. So I think it's a fun one for a November season. Shazin is another one of my all-time favorite games, and it's one that I don't get to play nearly often enough. It's also a shiny box, so I have to hold it strange so you can actually read it. Shazin was created by an Indian board game company, and it is a game about how elections work. Now, I know, right? We've all had more than enough of this. But Shazin is actually one of those games that's so fun, you almost forget what you're learning until you get to the end of the game, and then you sort of laugh so you don't cry. It is weirdly a combination of Risk and Cards Against Humanity. So in Shazin, they've created what they call theme decks. So this one is the USA from 2019 to 2020. It features a whole bunch of cards that feature issues from US politics. So it could be anything from infrastructure to LGBTQ issues and things like that. And on your turn, another person playing asks you a question as though you're a candidate running for office, and you have to choose whether to answer side A or side B of the card. Whichever answer you choose gives you a certain amount of influence of different kinds. There's idealism, there's authoritarianism, there's capital, money, and then there's celebrity. And you have to use various combinations of that kind of influence in order to influence voters in various areas. The real genius of Shazin is you don't win the game by winning the popular vote. You win the game by controlling the most voting precincts. So again, it's a little window into sort of the strategy and the math behind something like the Electoral College. Again, I know that sounds like a huge bummer, and it sort of is, but Shazin is so much fun to play. It has that sort of no holds barred Cards Against Humanity feel when you're answering these questions that it really genuinely is a ton of fun. Every time I brought Shazin to the table, people have said, "Oh no, our political system is so messed up. Also, when can we play this again?" So it's one of those weird examples of a game where you learn a ton and you feel more educated about how our country and our culture works, but you don't mind because you're really having a blast. Shazin plays up to 5 people, and yeah, it's a really, really good time. So I'm really excited to debut this one at our board game nights in November. And if you're on the fence about it, you might just want to give it a try. I think you'll be surprised how much you actually like it. Last but not least, you know that I couldn't leave us without a big fun party game, and that's We're Doomed. In We're Doomed, up to 10 players take the role of various countries in the world. And they're not identified by nationalities, but by governing ethos or governing political ideology. So there's democracies, technocracies, autocracies, theocracies, a few different kinds. And each one of them, has a special ability that's unique to them. But everyone has found out when you flip the big timer that starts off the game that the world has 15 minutes before it's going to be destroyed. So this is literally a timed game. Games of We're Doomed only last 15 minutes. During that 15 minutes, the various people at the table, which again represent the countries of the world, have to work together to build a rocket ship to get to launch into space. The problem is that the rocket ship has a limited number of seats, and that number of seats is determined by how well everyone works together. Now, you might be thinking, well, why doesn't everyone just work together? Because that way it's the most good for the most people. It's a great question, isn't it? And frankly, if you can answer that, you might have better insight into our political system than I do. I will say in We're Doomed, there are lots of surprises and incentives that make it so that you may not necessarily want to work for the good, because every turn you have the option either to commit resources to the common pool to build the rocket, or to gain influence. And you can only do one or the other, you can't do both. So the problem is at the end of the game, if there are 10 players but only 8 seats on the rocket, who gets to go on the rocket is determined by who has the most influence. So it's entirely possible that you could be very much a team player, contributing resources every turn, and then get to the end of the game, and because you didn't invest any influence, but you donated the most resources, you get left behind on a doomed Earth. This game is hilarious because it's only 15 minutes and it's timed. There's a huge sense of urgency. It's a great one for getting people to laugh. All of the different ideologies that are present affect the game in real and meaningful ways. And this game always ends in laughs and shouts and people wanting to play immediately again. And because it accommodates up to 10 people, it's great for a game night like we're having in November. Well, there you have it. That is the 6 featured games that we're going to have at all of the game nights in November. If you're not sure where those are, check the description down below for how you can find links to the upcoming event pages. You can also check out any of our socials, Facebook or Instagram at Game Nights JR, and we'll have them all listed there. Of course, if you're looking in Meetup or Eventbrite, they're there as well. Please feel free to show up, invite some friends. We're looking to have a great time. And patrons, please don't forget, you get to vote right now on which is our 7th game that's going to be featured. And I'll have a whole separate video for you where I walk through what those games are, why I am suggesting them, but then ultimately the choice is up to you. And of course, if you're not a patron yet, head over to patreon.com/GameNightsJR or check the link in the description and we'll get that connected. Thanks so much for watching. I can't wait to see you in November for this great setup of games that we have.